Hey everyone, my name is Dillon Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast. And welcome to a brand new episode of No Streaming Required, the show where we delve into the latest and greatest in physical media every single week. We have a great show in store for you today. We have a lot from the Warner Archive, we have something from 88 Films, Fun City Editions, Sony, a little bit of something for everyone, and I am just going to jump right in. I'm going to start with a Warner re-release that I know a lot of people will be very excited about because this was fetching high dollars on the aftermarket, and now it's finally available again widely, and that is the Powerpuff Girls, the complete series DVD set. Yes, DVD, unfortunately. I really wish this was a Blu-ray release, but this is back in print finally after first coming out, I believe, in 2009 as a complete series. Before that, they had released a single season, the first season, which I bought each of these releases, and then they went ahead and just did the complete series a couple years later, I believe in 2009. This has all 6 seasons on 12 discs, and so you get these nice compact packaging. These are not stuck in there. They just, you can kind of take them in and out, and then you have this kind of episode guide here where you can get all the episodes and bonus features, all that good stuff. And there's a good number of bonus features. So there's So yeah, that's 6 seasons, and that is 78 episodes. Special features including a couple different versions of the original pilot, back before it was a little bit less family friendly, and the whoop-ass girls. And then there's some episodes with commentary tracks, different featurettes. There's a documentary on the Powerpuff Girls as well. All of this was ported over from the original set, which if you have the original set, like I do, which I'll show up here in a second, you may want to check it. And this was one of the main reasons I was really excited for this, because some of my discs in the original set, this was during the time where Warner released some series where there was some disc failure after several years. So one side of my disc would not work on at least one of the discs. I hadn't made it through in a couple of years through the whole series, but I went to rewatch it a couple years ago, and the first side of my disc 1 would not work. And I'll explain a little bit more because you just saw that each of these were single-sided. This is the original set. Look how much bigger it is. So just for space saving alone, I'm all for this. But another main reason is, so here was the disc 1 release. Double-sided disc. So where this is double-sided, you get 2 discs here. So these 2 compared to just this double-sided. And so I always hated double-sided disc. It made it hard. It made it more susceptible to damage and disc failure. Some still do hold up well, but if they're going to do this re-release and not give it a Blu-ray upgrade, I'm at least glad they made it all single-sided. So instead of 6 double-sided, you get 12 single-sided discs in more compact packaging, which I need all the shelf space that I can handle. So this is a great re-release. I'm glad that they did it. Like I said, if anyone's listening, Warner Brothers, Warner Archive, if you ever release this on Blu-ray, I will just keep buying these until it's in the best quality possible. I think that's what all the fans really want, but until now, this will help people not have to pay so much on eBay or anything secondary market. And this is a really great release, and I highly recommend it. Keeping in the family-friendly realm and going into our Warner Archive stretch of the show, my first Warner Archive release is Scooby-Doo and Zombie Island, and Scooby-Doo Return to Zombie Island. So this is a 2-pack from Warner Archive. The original, I believe, late 90s original film that is a beloved classic, and the 2018-2019 sequel, Return to Zombie Island, which a lot of people were complaining that having Return to Zombie Island on this disc ruined the release and they wouldn't get it, which doesn't make sense because it doesn't make the price any higher. You're just getting an extra movie, and if you don't like it, just don't watch it. You're finally getting one of the movies that most Scooby-Doo fans is one of the best like standalone Scooby-Doo releases ever, in high definition. So Scooby-Doo and Zombie Island. It's a classic Scooby-Doo tale where this is one of the, this I believe was the first film that reunited the gang after the surge in popularity whenever in the 90s the Scooby-Doo cartoons started getting rerun on cable. And it had been like at least 10 years or so since new Scooby-Doo products had been coming out. So Zombie Island came out and it reunited the gang, but it put them in a place where things were a little bit different. At the beginning, they were kind of getting a little bit disenchanted with the whole mystery solving aspect of things, because every paranormal thing that they would uncover, it was always just a man in a mask, and they kind of got disillusioned and they kind of broke up and started to do their own things. And throughout this process, they end up getting reunited on this supposedly haunted island where this actually delves into some authentic supernatural things, like such as zombies and stuff, on this island. So it is the gang put it within real supernatural creatures and all that entails. It's a lot of fun. It's a little bit spookier and darker than your normal Scooby-Doo film. It's still a kid's film, so it's not like hard R-rated, but it's just a little bit spookier and a little bit more mature, still family friendly. A lot of fun, really great classic adventure. It's one of the best that I've seen from the original full-length Scooby-Doo films. I know a lot of people are very excited about this, and I don't think they'll be disappointed. Return to Zombie Island, it does kind of undo a little bit of the specialness of the original film. But there are things that I like about it. It's just not up to the original. And I do like you get to see Elvira pop up, which she has in a couple other more recent films. I love Elvira, so it's good to see her. The voice work, it's fine. So most of the recent Scooby-Doo offerings in the last 5 to 10 years just hasn't really hit as well as some of the classics, but they're usually pretty fine. And as just an additional movie and finally getting its Blu-ray debut, I'm not mad at it. In terms of this, Warner Archive, they're usually the best of the best, and this is a really great release. But I have to warn people that this is from the team that I think this is Warner Archive using masters prepared by Warner Home Video, which is something that happened on their Hanna-Barbera Superstar 10 release, which I've talked about in recent months, that came out in February. This still looks amazing, but there's just a tad bit more digital noise reduction, grain management, that makes things not look quite as authentic as it probably should. It's very minor, but compared to the work that Warner Archive usually does whenever they handle things from beginning to end, it's not quite as good. Return to Zombie Island, ironically enough, because people don't really like this movie, is treated very well because it's a more recent digital production, so it looks fantastic. It had everything good to go, and it was just slapped on disc, and it's running at a high bit rate. Everything technically is as good as it possibly can be in terms of how it's presenting the masters for both of these. It's just that the Warner Home Video team just doesn't trust people like with some of these old, like masters that they've redone for some of their animated stuff in the recent years. So it looks really good on Blu-ray, but just with that caveat that this is not Warner Archive controlling it from beginning to end. It looks great, just not as great as it could look. There's 2 brief, kind of trailer featurettes included. No real special features beyond that. Just really good looking movies. Sound is great, lossless audio, which is what you want. These are just been treated very well. So Zombie Island, Return to Zombie Island, Scooby-Doo fans, they finally have it on Blu-ray, and make sure to support it, because I hear that we might have some additional Hanna-Barbera stuff coming out later this year, and the more we support these types of releases, the more that we're going to get, and I'm just all for upgrading all of that. I just want it all. But the rest of my Warner Archive slate is not animated. A lot of it's not family friendly, but it's still a lot of great stuff. And my next one is an Oscar-nominated film. It is Audrey Hepburn in The Nun Story by Fred Zinnemann. This one I quite liked. It's Audrey Hepburn. It's very long. It's Audrey Hepburn as a young woman who decides that she wants to become a nun. Her main reason for doing so is she wants to be able to go overseas and help people. And her father was a famous doctor, and she's kind of grown up knowing like how to learning and like how to help people, and she wants to take that to some of the people that needed overseas. I believe she is specifically wanting to go like to the Congo. So this is her journey, starting to get into the convent. And what I really like about this is while I am myself kind of skeptical of religion, this takes a more of an even-handed approach to the institution of becoming a nun or religion and stuff. It's not taking anything down. It's taking everything at face value, and it just shows how difficult it can be for a person who decides that they do want to embark on this lifestyle, and how it impacts them and in different ways of having to kind of give up your sense of self and give yourself over to a higher power, and kind of give up kind of your own pride and vanity and be of service of others without thinking anything of yourselves, and how that inherently is very hard for people to just kind of strip away, kind of growing up not having that kind of mindset. And it shows Audrey's characters, her struggle and just with different things, while also excelling in a lot of ways. So it's a lot of things that she does very well, and then she'll have some setbacks. But it's always to the point where it is more about how she specifically is reacting to this situation, rather than just us viewing it as an audience. Look, she's in a horrible situation. It's not necessarily a horrible situation. I thought a lot of things were not necessarily this might shock you to learn, but I probably would not have the kind of propensity to thrive in this kind of environment as to become a nun, because I'm very materialistic, and just I would not be able to do this. And the fact that anyone can do this is very admirable, if that's what they want to do. I myself have a great aunt who is a nun that I've heard about, so I'm not against nuns, but this movie itself is just a very interesting look at that world, because especially at the time that this was put out, you just didn't really get a lot of behind the convent walls type cinematic storytelling. And Hepburn is great. She is opposite a lot of great performers throughout. Just watching this 2.5-hour movie, despite it being that long, and never really lost my interest, because she just her journey is so compelling, and from beginning to end, everything that she goes through, despite me just kind of occasionally wanting to scream at the screen, it's very a worthwhile journey, even for more so non-believers. This presentation is fantastic. This comes from a 4K scan of the original camera negative. It includes a trailer. The new transfer looks fantastic. Rich natural film grain, no compression artifacts or anything like that, deep black levels, no blown highlights. Everything just looks fantastic from this original camera negative. I'm sure it's the best that it will ever look, and you will not be left disappointed. The audio sounds very strong. I did not notice any age-related anomalies. This is just a really pristine presentation of this movie. So if you're interested in Audrey Hepburn or this movie in general, fantastic release from Warner Archive. Another interesting release, kind of dealing in the realm of faith and stuff in a different way. This is Gary Cooper in Friendly Persuasion. This deals with Gary Cooper right at the time of the Civil War, and he himself is a Quaker, and his family are they're in a kind of a more of a Quaker community, but also with non-Quaker folk in the community as well, which kind of leads to some differences in beliefs and lifestyles, and just kind of some clashes. So Gary Cooper himself, he is married to what I believe is a minister. His wife is a minister of kind of this Quaker church, which I found very fascinating, that women at this time, especially Civil War times, holding kind of more of a position of religious power. Fascinating to me. It's not a huge part of the movie, but it does set up this dynamic between his wife, who is very, very much in the kind of Quaker lifestyle and the doctrine and everything, and just like nonviolence and wanting to be a service of others, all that kind of stuff. Cooper, while married to her and a Quaker, he is more kind of like a restless Quaker. He believes in things, but he, at the same time, he gets a little bit like, it's a little bad sometimes. But his version of Breaking Bad is like racing his friend to church like in a horse and buggy race despite his wife's objections and stuff, and just like pretending like he's not trying to beat him to church, but like doing so, and also wanting very much to have like an organ in the house, but like it's like against their beliefs to like deal like have music or something. I don't know. I just know it's a no to have this kind of music in their household. He really wants it and kind of just wants to keep it a secret, and his wife is just flatly against it. And it's those kinds of things. This kind of more general domestic drama set in the backdrop of the Civil War, where his neighbors believes that he and his family should start getting into the fray because the Confederacy is like approaching and people need to like kind of get ready to defend themselves. But the Quakers preach nonviolence, so they are not wanting to get. So it kind of creates this tension within the community that he is kind of determined not to help support either side of the war. And then also his son is kind of even more restless than he is and wants to kind of join the fight. So there's like a lot of the time in this movie you kind of forget that there is a war going on because you're so situated in this domestic drama. Like his young daughter is kind of like smitten with this soldier who's like went off to war, but he comes home occasionally, and it's just a slice of life, while also calm, like just like you slowly have Civil War encroaching on their lives, and like eventually it culminates into like the finale and how this kind of all comes together. It works very well. This is also a very long movie. This is almost 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's like 2 hours and 17 minutes. So another really long one, but another one that did not lose my attention at any point throughout. This was a very engaging watch. This is a William Wyler movie. He's one of our best from like the old school Hollywood. Cooper, he does a really great job. I think I saw a lot of people complained in the contemporary reviews. They felt that he was a little bit too old for this role. I did not really feel that, but I think he does a good job. The lady who plays his wife, who I believe may have been nominated for an Oscar, she does a really good job as well. I believe that's Dorothy McGuire. You have a young Anthony Perkins as his son. It's one of his first roles, really great as well. It's just one of those great like old school Hollywood movies where it's an intriguing subject matter, great production value, everything's just working together. It's a beautiful release. This also comes from a 4K scan restoration of the original camera negative. It has been maintained very well. It's cleaned up, nary a blemish anywhere. Really strong audio as well. It's just a really good time. And also, I just want to say, I described this, and it may sound a little bit kind of boring or kind of like dramatic. There's a lot of really funny things to break up this as well. So there's like a lot of really funny moments. So there's a good balance between like the dramatic and kind of more lighthearted moments that I think people will enjoy. In terms of special features, there's not much. There's just like an 11-minute special from around the time this was being filmed that kind of gives you like behind the scenes look at William Wyler working with the cast, which is really cool, and then also a trailer. So another top tier release from Warner Archive, no complaints here. And that just keeps on rolling on to The Devil's Doorway with Robert Taylor. This one, I think the disc itself also puts a warning on this, but this one I need to put a warning on, just not as much as the next one I'm going to talk about, but there's some, well, probably the same amount as the next one I'm going to talk about, if I'm being honest. It's a forward-thinking movie thematically, but there's some very backward depictions of Native Americans in this movie, mostly in terms of Robert Taylor playing a Native American who is not of a Native American, he's a white man. But what, I believe this is an Anthony Mann movie. It is. I love Anthony Mann, and this movie specifically is trying to give a very positive depiction of Native Americans and how this Civil War hero who comes home, he's a Native American. He wants to come home and just kind of like settle himself, buy some property, work his land, all that stuff. But Native Americans cannot own property at this time, and this man who should be welcomed as a war hero and like everything he sacrificed, gets wrapped up in like, yes, thank you for helping preserve our country's safety, but also you do not matter enough to benefit from what this country has to offer. And it's just kind of, it is progressively for, like, this movie is trying to be progressive and just try to say like equality for Native Americans. The fact that they could not get a actual Native American to portray this this role is one of its only downfalls, I would say. And you kind of get like a situation where he tries to get a lawyer who is a woman that he starts to have a relationship with, and just her trying to help him out, and the racism of the time, and that's just kind of keeping everything just from progressing, and just how it kind of erupts into violence in the end whenever people are not able to live the life that they want to live just because of backward thinking. And there's some really, really heinous, villainous people like pulling the strings, just trying to cause like chaos, basically. There's this one character I hated, and I wanted to punch him in the face. But if you kind of like Machiavellian like string pullers and melodramatic stuff, I think you'll like this movie. It's a pretty entertaining movie. It's not my favorite Warner Archive release I've seen. I like the last two I talked about more, but this is an interesting one. I like Anthony Mann. It's just that casting, that main casting, oof, it's unfortunate. But the movie itself, it's been given a good release. This isn't as kind of pristine as the previous two movies. This was one of the victims of the George Eastman House fire that happened decades ago, I believe in the 70s. So the original camera negative burned up. So this comes from a second generation fine grain that has been restored in 4K. And while there are small things that you can tell, like small shots you can tell that this is not from the original camera negative, they look a little bit softer. This still overall looks like a very, very beautiful release. Audio track also is in good shape. In terms of special features, not too much. There's two animated shorts, which I appreciate, in HD, and then also a trailer. If you like a Western that's trying to be progressive, and despite them not totally getting it, Devil's Doorway is not too bad if you just kind of go in with the right expectations. Another problematic release, but one that I know a lot of old school horror fans have been requesting for years, and you're finally getting it, but it is not as progressive thinking as well. That is The Mask of Fu Manchu, with Boris Karloff, and Myrna Loy, and a lot of good people. So Lewis Stone, Karen Morley, Gene Herschelt, and so yes, you have Boris Karloff playing the fiendish Fu Manchu, who is just this also, I had to deal with this whenever Kino Lorber released their Fu Manchu films with Warner Olin, but this I think maybe even worse off. So Boris Karloff playing like a Asian American stereotype to the max. This is like fresh off of like Frankenstein era Karloff. The main thing is just like he is this evil warlord type person who is trying to find the armor of Genghis Khan in order to like gain its power, and he's like kidnaps some white people to like try to get the location of it. And basically it's just like, it's an Asian scare type movie of just like this Asian warlord is trying to gain all this power to basically eliminate white people. It is very much just like, white people, go to the movies and see like what's the most scariest thing you can think of, like getting wiped out by Asian American people. So yeah, both Karloff and Myrna Loy, who plays his daughter, playing Asian stereotypes. So, but I can see why horror fans are interested in this from like a historical standpoint. This does kind of go for broke in terms of like some of the stuff with like the violence and torture, like, cause like he tortures a lot of people and it can get pretty intense. But overall, story-wise, I wasn't the most impressed with this. There's other kind of pre-code horror movies that I responded to a little bit more. Even setting aside the racist stuff, this was a movie that didn't completely grab me. I thought it was fine, and I appreciated it from more of a historical aspect. And maybe if I watch it again, I'll kind of see more so what other people get from this. It's just compared to the hype that I've heard for years and years of people just like, I need the Mask of Fu Manchu, release it, release it. After all these years of hearing that, and we finally get it, it's just, the movie itself just did not live up to those expectations. It's fine, but more so for historical purposes for me. But in terms of the restoration, they treated this very well. This is from a 4K restoration of the best preservation elements available. Even more so than The Devil's Doorway, this holds up. There are less moments where you would realize that this isn't from the original camera negative. This is very consistent transfer. Especially being a movie from this time period of like the early 30s. The audio is in pretty good shape. There's a little bit of variance here and there, which you would expect from a like over 90-year-old picture. Overall, it's in pretty good shape. In terms of special features, you get an audio commentary track and 2 cartoons. So pretty solid release here. A couple more were an archive release, and the next 2 are from the same director. And okay, so I'm going on a run of talking about the films of Francis Ford Coppola, and this comes out at an interesting time because his latest film, that's his first in like a decade or so, Megalopolis, just debuted at the Cannes Film Festival, and so far the buzz is not the best. This is kind of capitalizing on that because there's a lot of his earlier movies that are finally getting released in like ideal presentations. The first of which is one of his earliest, not his debut, but one of his earliest, and that is You're a Big Boy Now. And so yeah, this is from the Warner Archive. This is kind of like an offbeat one. It's more of like kind of absurdist, satiric a little bit. It's about a young man who is very oblivious to the world. His parents are very controlling of his life, especially his mother, played by Geraldine Page, who is in the movie married to Rip Torn as his father, which is interesting because they were a real life couple. His mother, played by Geraldine Page, is just super like overbearing and just like treats him as if he is like a literal like 5-year-old, and just does not want him to like do anything with any girls. He doesn't want him to like walk down certain streets because he's afraid he's going to get hurt. Just like super controlling. But he does kind of get an apartment in Greenwich. It's kind of like a shady area at this time. The building is kind of overseen by this landlord who they kind of have an arrangement with to keep an eye on him. But he's kind of adult. He just kind of like walks down the streets wide-eyed and just like not understanding a lot of things. And he kind of gets wrapped up with a couple different women, one of which is Karen Black, and I believe her screen debut, who is very much into him. But he's just kind of like overlooking her in favor of this other girl who's kind of like more of a go-go dancer, actress type, who he is madly in love with and just kind of tries to get involved with. He's very inexperienced and kind of like just stumbling over everything, and like he has his parents all up in his business, and it's just kind of like, it kind of goes into like some absurdist elements. That there's a lot of stuff that I found very funny. There is one like just the way he views his world. Like there's a couple of times where Coppola views the world through his eyes and his naivete, that I did burst out laughing at a couple things that happened within this movie. I wish the whole movie was as funny as certain moments that happened, but I know I like this quite a bit more than my wife did. But overall, like it's a pretty amusing movie for what it is. It's just it's far from Coppola's best, but I mean Coppola's also had a lot of misses, so it's not his worst. So overall, I think this is a pretty fun one. It kind of has like the feeling of the 60s counterculture. So if you're like kind of into like absurdist humor and 60s counterculture, You're a Big Boy Now. It's worth checking out. This comes from a 4K scan of the original camera negative. Fantastic transfer, natural film grain, no blemishes, great soundtrack. Only a trailer in terms of special features, but really great release. And just a couple years later, we would also get another one from Coppola, and that is The Rain People. This one is a little bit more dramatic. You have Shirley Knight as a woman who she has recently found out she is pregnant. She is married, but she is not completely happy with, but kind of living in that housewife role. And just at the beginning of the movie, you see her kind of sneaking out of the house, and she just wants to kind of get away. Just get away from it all. Who knows for how long? Maybe for just like the day, maybe for a couple days, but she just wants to kind of like not be hemmed into that housewife role and just wants more out of life. So she kind of goes on this road trip, and like eventually her husband find out. And we never see her husband. We just see her hear from him on a phone call. But she is just kind of like wanting to take some time for herself to figure herself out and figure her life out, because she's kind of a younger bride, and she just, with this new news of her potentially becoming a new mother, she needs to figure herself out first. And she meets them. It's kind of like more of a vignette-driven narrative where she meets several different people. One of the most prominent is like a young man played by a very young James Caan, which Coppola, he deals with a few people that he would work with a few years later in The Godfather, including Robert Duvall. So James Caan and Robert Duvall just a few years later being in The Godfather, but they're both in this one. James Caan plays a character that's a young man who he used to be a football player. He suffered brain damage, so there's a little like elements to that and how he's portrayed, but he's a very kind of simple-minded man who is like kind of gets hooked up with Shirley's character, and like they form a really nice friendship. There's some moments that are a little like cringy, but it's far from the worst depiction of like this type of character. In terms of like Tropic Thunder, if you know, you know, it doesn't go full. This journey, her journey, filled with some ups and downs, filled with a lot of interesting characters. What holds this really together for me is Shirley Knight's performance. I got really invested in her and just like her wanting her independence. The way this ends, I was a little bit disappointed by. It's not unbelievable. It just kind of like personally, I was kind of sad for some of the events that happened. But I mean, it made me feel something, so that's good. I mean, it's a good movie. I think I would say this is better than You're a Good Boy Now. It's a solid movie. It's a solid Coppola joint. This is a really good Blu-ray, 4K scan, the original camera negative, fantastic release. Like I said, this is a recurring thing for Warner Archive. They do really good work, good soundtrack, and just a trailer. Leaving the world of the Warner Archive, but sticking with Francis Ford Coppola, because like I said, these companies are capitalizing on this new movie. This is from Lionsgate, and now we're going to the land of 4K. This is a 4K release of One from the Heart, Reprise. So this is kind of coming... I think this was the film that he did right after Apocalypse Now. And this was a movie, he started his American Zoetrope Studios, and it damn near closed it right after it, because he spent so much money on this movie, which was, in retrospect, a very big miscalculation. Lost a ton of money, nearly sunk the studio. It was a huge bomb, notorious bomb. And for such a small-scale movie, you would be surprised with how much money was spent. But it's because he was so meticulous in building up these sets that replicated Las Vegas. So it's kind of like, it feels like you're it feels like you're on a movie set, or a theater play set, where you are immersed in this heightened version of Las Vegas and these characters. But the story itself is very simple and doesn't really play in enough to kind of the grand aesthetic that is going on that it really makes it work. But the core of this story is these two people who are together, one of which is played by Terry Garr, who she's very lovely in this. They are 5 years into a relationship, and they are celebrating their anniversary. It's right around the 4th of July. They give each other presents. She gives him some tickets to Bora Bora, which he says they cannot afford and do not want to. He doesn't want to go on. He gives her the deed to the house that they're living in, which it's kind of this push and pull. Like, she wants adventure and like excitement. He is like kind of like hemming her into this lifestyle of like, you are here now, you're stuck in Vegas, we have a house together, we have a life together, and kind of how this almost starts to fracture their relationship and how they kind of go off on their own whenever they kind of like reach kind of a breaking point. They each kind of meet their own special people that they like have a night with. She meets Raul Julia, who people might know best as Gomez from the 90s Addams Family movies. And he meets Natasha Kinski, who people probably know best from Cat People. She's been in a lot of great stuff. And also, this is a pseudo-musical. Not traditionally. There are some like dancing numbers and stuff, but the way this plays out, you have Crystal Gale and Tom Waits providing kind of like a narration through music throughout the movie. So it's kind of like they're singing, but it's kind of echoing stuff that's happening on screen. And then you also get like some heightened musical number type situations where there's dancing and everything. There are moments I liked about this, and I was vibing a little bit with the visuals of this specifically. Like, this is a really interesting movie to look at. Thematically, a little bit more of a rocky road for me, because this is a very personal story for Coppola, where kind of a ode to his wife Eleanor, who recently passed away within the past few months. With rest in peace to her. That's very sad. But they did remain together. But this was at like one of the most pivotal points in their relationship, where they almost themselves split up, and just kind of he's like kind of documenting that on film. But how it works out on film, it really did not work for me. But I think it's because it's how Coppola wanted it to work out in real life. So I did not understand why these people were together. I won't spoil the end of the movie, but just like, I never was rooting for their relationship. I never wanted them to have a reconciliation or anything like that, because he acts so heinously in certain points. I could not get on board with it. And I mentioned this as a one from the heart reprise, as he's been known to do. Coppola tinkered with this movie recently and re-released this. And usually when you have kind of like a director's cut type version, it's usually longer. This is actually shorter. This actually happened with his film Twixt, that was released a couple years ago on Blu-ray, which also similarly was a shit show and did not improve the movie. The benefit is this is shorter, so there's kind of less filler. I'd actually never seen the original film. There are some baffling editing choices that have occurred now that like this new cut has evolved, and it does conveniently cut out a very big plot point that makes the man look even more like a shitbag. So I think Coppola is trying to make the man's character be a little bit more sympathetic. Even seeing that version first, I was not sympathetic to this man, so it did not work. So those who do not have like an inherent like if they have a hatred for this movie, I don't think it will be like a night and day difference seeing the reprise version. It's just a little shorter and a little tighter and a little bit rearranged. But this new restoration, it's a new 4K restoration. It looks very nice, and it does allow the film to look the best it's ever looked. I do have the old Francis Ford Coppola like 5 or 6 film collection from Lionsgate from like a decade ago, and just taking a look at that Blu-ray disc of One from the Heart, it is a major difference. That was a very bad looking Blu-ray disc, and the reprise version is the only version on 4K. The original theatrical cut is on Blu-ray, but it's also from the 4K remaster. It's just not also presented in 4K. You get all the archival special features that were previously on disc, and then you get new special features. So you get the commentary track, several different featurettes, some new interviews, one of which is like with Baz Luhrmann, which is a lot of fun because you can see the inspirations for stuff like Romeo and Juliet and Moulin Rouge and stuff. And then you get the new commentary track. This does come with Dolby Vision. It looks very nice, especially with some of the colors that are on screen really pop. I think presentationally, this and the original audio, it's fantastic. It's just movie-wise, it's not my favorite Coppola, and it's an unsteady effort, even in its new form. But if you're a fan of the film, it's the ultimate presentation, and you'll be very happy with it. My next film, I'm gonna do my best to pronounce this because I listened to them talk about this in the special features. So I think this is Shih, Beauty of Beauties. I think a lot of like those who are cowards just call it Beauty of Beauties, but I just wanted to get the woman that this is inspired by, her name into the title, because that is it. This does have reversible cover art. The cover art is usually the same as this. I've already reversed it to cut down on time with me reversing it itself, but you can kind of see some of that through here as well. And the disc artwork has that as well. And then you also get a new booklet from 88 Films with some good essays about this film. This is a Taiwanese film, and this is, I believe, the first time it's been released in the U.S. If what I was hearing on one of the special features, or what they were talking about. I've talked about like a lot of martial arts movies and like ninja movies, samurai movies and stuff in recent years. This is not that. This is actually a historical epic. It's based on like the legend of a real life woman. And this is kind of like something that would remind, it kind of is reminiscent of something like a Ben-Hur or like Spartacus or something like that, where there's a lot of grand scale to this. It is like very impressive in its scale, but it's more about the palace intrigue / drama of everything, where there's a couple different like clans at work like vying for power, but there's especially the major power is like bulldoze like this one specific tribe. But this young girl who lost her dad to this tribe, she ends up growing up and going basically undercover as like basically to get with kind of the ruler of the opposing tribe, and kind of whisper in his ear and try and use her beauty and her feminine wiles to kind of like manipulate him to kind of do some of her bidding and help her homeland get kind of an upper hand and finally get some power. So a lot of his advisors hate her and is very distrustful of her, but she is very cunning, and the way she kind of uses her manipulation it's very intriguing. And overall it's a really engaging movie. This never really gets to the point where whenever there's going to be like a major battle, they usually kind of cut and like talk about it instead of actually showing it. But there are some times, especially in like the last 45 minutes or so, where you start getting to see like some chariots and horses and like 1,000 extras like in these like grand like locations that are very impressive in terms of scale, and so much so that this also almost put its studio out of business, and it would eventually, by the end of the decade of which it's released, they would go under. But they burned bright whenever they were working, and the movie in terms of scale is really, really impressive. There was something that Tony Raines said in the special interview, which it was very helpful for me in terms of context. That was like a 22-minute interview that he gave about this movie and kind of its place. This was originally, when it was first released as 2 movies that were 2 hours each. When it was re-released, it was cut down to its current form, which is right under 2.5 hours. And that's just the version that's been in circulation ever since. So I think the original 4-hour-ish version, composed of 2 movies, no longer exists. That's unfortunate, because you do notice that there are a lot of like quick edits that were a little bit jarring when I was watching them and really made sense in retrospect. And the main character here, she really gets lost in like that last 45 minutes, even though she should be the interest of the movie. And he talks about how that is kind of the case, where a lot of her stuff, like a lot of the palace melodrama, was cut out in terms of like the spectacle and everything and scale. Despite that, this is a good movie. I just really wish that 2-part movie still existed, because I think that would be very interesting to get that whole version. But this is the version that the Taiwan decided to restore a couple years ago and is now finally hitting disc. And the restoration efforts are very impressive. This comes from a 4K remaster of the original camera negative. A lot of the original material was not in the best shape, so there are still some issues here and there in terms of color variation and just like consistency, but overall there's a restoration featurette on here that kind of shows the before and after of the restoration efforts that really show how much of an improvement this was after the restoration. So even if there is a little bit of variance here and there, this looks fantastic on Blu-ray, and especially since it's never been released domestically, like here in the US, this is a really good discovery from 88 Films. And like, while it might not be as action packed and like violent as a lot of Shaw Brothers stuff and everything that we get from like Hong Kong and Taiwan and everything, this is a good movie, and I think it's worth checking out for fans. So you have that Tony Raines interview, you get the restoration comparison and a trailer, and the original 2.0 Mandarin audio and LPCM 2.0. So it sounds good, looks good. Great release from 88 Films, and if you want the slipcover and everything, make sure to get this sooner rather than later. My next release, I was very excited about. This was from Fun City Editions. It's a 3-film set called Seeing Red, three French vigilante thrillers. This is like it delivers. It's all about revenge and vigilantism. But so we have 3 films. Shot Pattern, that is about a man who his girlfriend, who he loves and he is intending to marry, she ends up getting attacked on the way home on a train one night, and ends up getting killed. And this man wants to kind of seek out revenge, despite not being the most like he's not like your typical like badass and stuff. He's more like just like an everyman, just who wants revenge, and like his journey. It overall works pretty well. I was very entertained by it. It's a more straightforward revenge film. The next one was Street of the Damned. That one is about like this man here who he used to be like kind of like a tough guy, street thug, like one of the baddest in the game, who got out of the game, and he's like, he has his wife, but he chooses to get involved in business that is not his because he's trying to help out a woman he finds like kind of lying on the street who has just been hurt, and he's like knows if he helps her, he's probably going to set off a chain of events that's going to lead him to his old crew, and chaos will ensue. And that happens. He helps her, and his old crew comes knocking, and he kind of like has to battle his way out of like this whole situation that he gets himself embroiled in. It's like a very dramatic like kind of gang drama, and like his wife really wants him to not get involved, but he knows that he has to kind of like reckon with his past. So Street of the Damned, it's one of those films where the ending makes sense, but I was disappointed by it. But overall, it's a really good film. And then your final one is Blacklist, which is about a woman whose daughter gets involved with some kind of unsavory people, gets involved in a bank robbery, but what they don't know in the course of this bank robbery that's been planned for them is that they are kind of decoys for this larger situation that is going on. And what ends up happening is her daughter ends up getting killed, and this mother, she ends up going out and trying to get revenge on these men who set her and her friends up. It's typical badass revenge stuff. All 3 of these are, and all 3 of these are good movies, and I quite enjoyed all of them. These are all courtesy restorations from Studio Canal. I do not have specifics on like what the sources were for these, but they are all been restored by Studio Canal, and they look very nice. All come in the original French. Every single one of these has an audio commentary track. You also get some interviews and stuff, featurettes and stuff. So overall, really good set from Fun City Editions. If you like vigilante movies, revenge thrillers, Seeing Red's a really good one, and I really like this slipcase, so make sure to get this sooner rather than later if you also want that. Fun City is one of the most underrated in the game, so make sure to support anything and everything they do. Next up, I have 2 from Oscilloscope Laboratories. I love them so much, and I'm glad that I was able to check out some of their recent releases, one of which is Clara Sola. This, I believe, is a Chilean film from a couple years ago, and this one speaks in tandem to some of the stuff that I was watching earlier, like Rain People and stuff, because it's about like a woman who is being repressed. Clara, our main character, she is kind of she's very oppressed by her mother. She has a little bit of a diminished capacity, and her mother really feels like she has to kind of like watch over her and really like make sure she basically is not allowed to be a full person. She like tries to tamp down any notion of like sexuality and stuff, sometimes through kind of torturous means. But she is also exploiting her daughter for kind of some, like kind of the mystical quality she has with life and people and stuff. So she has like, she is kind of viewed as kind of like a savior-ish figure, or like a vessel of God, in terms of like interacting with people and animals, and like people feel that like she can heal them and stuff, and people kind of make a trek to see her, and her mom kind of exploits that, but also seemingly believes it, and for good reason, because you see a lot of stuff throughout that you see that Clara is possibly like a mystical type person. But she is also, like, as her younger niece, I believe, niece or sister, is on the verge of like entering her own kind of womanhood and like having her own quinceanera, and has her own boyfriend and stuff. She kind of sees what her, like, this young woman is doing, and starts to have her own spiritual and sexual awakening, while everyone is trying to make her not have that. So it's like her finally coming into her own, and all the people who are trying to keep her in this box. It's a very hard movie to watch a lot of times, because you just want to like yell at these people and let Clara live, and just like let her live her life. But it's a journey, and it's a very rewarding journey, I would say, ultimately. But also it's like a lot of tough stuff is happening. And overall, I really, really love this movie. I think it's a really rewarding watch. If you like international films, especially ones that center on like a woman's coming into her own, definitely check this one out. I really thought this was a good discovery for me, and maybe it will be for you as well. You have an audio commentary track and 3 of the filmmakers' short films that I think is a really nice added value. I think you have like a trailer as well. But overall, good release. This Oscilloscope, they have 2 versions of usually releasing things. They have like this standard version now that comes in this plastic case, and they also have a digipack version, which I typically do not like because it's very thin and flimsy. But if you like that, there's 2 versions on their website. So Clara Sola, it's a pretty solid release for a film that I think more people should have their eyes on. This next film from Oscilloscope is kind of working in conversation with One from the Heart, and that is because this is a director doing a director's cut of their film long after the fact. That is Going All the Way. This is a late 90s movie with Jeremy Davies and Ben Affleck starring. I think this is one of Ben Affleck's first starring roles. And this is from director Mark Pellington. So this is his kind of director's cut, and unlike One from the Heart, this is quite a bit longer. I believe there's like at least 30 minutes of additional material, but I read that there is 50 minutes of new material, so maybe some of the edits throughout are like, or things are like switched out potentially. But I know there's at least, compared to the runtime I saw for the original cut, I believe there's at least like 30 minutes of additional material. This is set right, like kind of like at the end of the Korean War, where there's like Davies and Affleck play soldiers who are like coming back from the war. Davies is more of kind of, he wasn't overseas, he was stationed in the U.S. as kind of like a bureaucratic type person, and Affleck is coming from Japan, and he used to be kind of this jock character who like just like kind of like your typical jock character, but as he was in the war and went to Japan, he's become more cultured and more like spiritually aware, and it's like a really interesting arc because Davies used to go to high school with him, and he just has this idea of him as just like this jock character. But they form this friendship, and they are each kind of dealing with returning home and just like their new kind of perspectives in life, where Davies kind of has like this a little bit of an overbearing parent situation, one of which is played by Jill Clayburgh, who I really love. I recently talked about her in Starting Over. She's a gem, and she's really good in this film as well. But it's really this like kind of journey of these 2 guys trying to settle into their lives to varying success, and a lot of them trying to score and get with women, but also just trying to reckon with themselves. Davies' character has a girl who basically, he left to go into the army and now has come back, and she's been waiting for him, and he thinks she's fine, but doesn't really like think that much of her, and she's like in love with him. And so he's kind of like has this weird relationship with her, but while he's trying to like also hook up with other people. And some of the other like women in this film was like Rachel Weisz and Rose McGowan is in this. So some good performers. There's some good stuff to this movie, and I can see where you can actually see like some of the material that they added in is like a lower quality, and I think some of the stuff that's added in does help the movie. It's just it didn't completely blow me away. I think it's a fine like late 90s indie drama. It works well. It's not blowing my hair back. But I think there's really good performances. It's just the way they treat the women in this movie, especially. Not even in terms of like how the characters treat them, but they just like treat them. The movie kind of treats them as just like an afterthought. I wish there was a little bit more to them, just to add a layer of complexity to go along with kind of this male angst that's really the center of this movie. It's worth a watch, but just with caveats. But this release is really good. The new footage has been restored into this, but as I mentioned, some of it you can tell like they didn't have access to all the original materials, so the material is sometimes like blatantly different, but some of it's more subtly integrated. It looks as good as it possibly can look, considering like this is like a lot of this was like working from like lower quality elements, but overall good representation. You also have a whole disc of special features because you need it, because there's like a 3 hour and 6 minute documentary on this movie, which lots and lots of material in this, everything you would want to know. But you also get some additional interviews, some audition like an audition tape from Nick Offerman, who's in this movie, a very young Nick Offerman. So that's fun. You get some deleted scenes. This is a very respectable release of like a film with a director's new version and vision of this. Handled with care by Oscilloscope. Even if I still don't think it's a masterpiece, it's worth checking out for sure. And my final film is from Sony. This is City of Hope, which is a John Sayles movie. I recently checked out a couple of John Sayles movies. Like I just a couple weeks ago checked out 8 Men Out, which is a pretty solid baseball movie. This is him working like with a sprawling cast in this like an urban environment, and it's kind of about like class dynamics and like the different people that are like reside within the city, and like the people like who are developing the city, trying to potentially subjugate some of the like the lower class people, and like how that kind of all blends together with all the different storylines of like these lower class people who are trying to just exist. A lot of them are people of color, and like the people who are trying to exploit them, and just all the racial and class dynamics and everything all worked into one. And Sayles excels with dialogue and interactions, and there's a lot of really good like meaty like lines of dialogue. And overall, I think it's a pretty solid movie. This is like a 2 hour long movie, or 2 hour and 10 minute long movie. So there's a lot of stuff in this movie, a lot of different characters. A few notable names, like you got Angela Bassett here, Joe Morton, a very brief Chris Cooper, but there's a lot of like people you probably never heard from much more after this movie, but there's also really turning in good performances. But Sayles does a really good job with this, and I think it's a drama worth discovering just for kind of like this pot boiler of like a city or like drama. There's no specific details on this, but you can tell that it has been remastered by Sony in recent years. It's a very beautiful natural transfer, natural film grain, rich texture, good colors, deep black levels, no blown highlights. Just a really good release. You also get an audio commentary from John Sayles, who gives some context to this movie. But yeah, overall, City of Hope, solid one from Sony. And that wraps me up. So we had a pretty solid release here, release week here. I appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see me cover anything specific in the future, make sure to leave a comment. Let me know what you liked about this. You can also let me know what you don't like about this, but be nice. Make sure to share this with anyone you think might like this. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, because I keep doing this every week. We have also other interviews and stuff on the channel that are also very cool. One of my colleagues recently got to talk to J.K. Simmons, which I think is very awesome, so make sure to check that one out. But until next week, I'll be back again. But until then, Enjoy these movies.
WC. Warring countries.
Now, here's enough for 3 telephone calls. And when you use up the 3, I'll give you enough for 3 more.
Welcome, communists.